This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
I'm Steve Flowers, and welcome to Alabama Politics. Folks, we're fortunate to have one of the great Alabamians of Alabama's of this time and era on the show tonight. We've had Judge Roy Moore on several times. He's been Chief Justice of Alabama Supreme Court for a long time, a native of Etowah County, a former circuit judge, and as I said, Chief Justice of Alabama Supreme Court twice. And we appreciate Judge Moore taking time to be on our show tonight. He is the leading candidate for the United States Senate for the open seat of Jeff Sessions, and we appreciate Judge Moore taking time to be with us, and we thank you viewers for watching. Judge, good to have you on.
Thank you, Steve. Nice to be with you.
Judge Moore's been one of my regular guests. He's been nice to be on our show here in the River region. Judge Moore is running for the open U.S. Senate seat, and folks, I think that's a good job for him. And Judge, I'll tell you one thing, and before we get into the U.S. Senate race, I just can't, I think most Alabamians are really angered and sort of just almost disbelief the way you've been treated by this vague Judicial Inquiry Commission. You being removed from the Supreme Court. Well, Alabama people elected you overwhelmingly. And by the way, I'll say this, and I said on a radio show earlier today, people don't need to underestimate your popularity, because if you know this, and I'll remind my viewers of this, that when you were elected Chief Justice last time, people kind of said, well, he won't win this race. And they had all this money spent against you, and Charlie Graddick ran, who was a well-known former Attorney General, well-financed out of Mobile. And then Governor Bentley's hand-picked candidate, Judge Malone, was in there with all the BCA money. And you beat both of them without a runoff. And that's before they kicked you off the Supreme Court for being against gay marriage. I mean, you know, so tell the viewers what you think about all that.
Well,
I don't think it's right, I'll be honest with you.
No, but I'm thankful that the people elected me, and the people of Alabama see through this. What the JIC and the COJ have done is violate their own rules and their own laws. Clearly, we passed a rule when I was on the Supreme Court that you couldn't be removed except by unanimous vote, when they didn't have unanimous vote. They even said they didn't have unanimous vote, but they said, well, we can suspend you for the rest of your term without pay and health benefits. For 2 years and 4 months, they've never done it.
Without any pay or health benefits?
That's right. And so they expect you to carry the title of Chief Justice and sit in a chair. It can't go in the building, but you can sit in the chair and call yourself Chief Justice. It's like if you were on trial for capital murder and it took 12 unanimous verdicts, say it did, to be found guilty, and they didn't have it. They had, say, like 10. Well, then they decide, well, we can get a unanimous verdict to put you in life without parole, without food and water. Well, you're going to die anyway. So, I mean, they're doing the same thing and calling it something else, and they clearly got away with it, and judges, both at the appointed Supreme Court, retired judges, ignored that to the detriment of all the judges of the state of Alabama. That's why I stayed around to help the people and help the judges of the state of Alabama not to be under such a rule, and that's why I appealed. But it didn't do any good. They ignored it. So,
well, I think people think you've been done wrong, and probably think you've been done wrong twice. But we'll see. You know, there's a hidden silent majority out there that think that, you know, well, I'm a non-lawyer. I don't know the legal ramifications, but that's what lawyers do. They argue different sides of a subject, and your position was, and you based on legal precedent, that this is what I think the law is, or this is what we all do. But I mean, that's not for removal from a job, I don't think.
You know, they said I offended a federal judge by telling probate judges not to obey her order. Basically, what I said was that the legal injunctions issued by the Alabama Supreme Court were still in force and effect, and this federal judge, Callie Grenade, actually came out on June 7th of 2017 and said, 2016 I should say, and said the same thing. She said the injunctions are in effect. Even if you remove Chief Justice Moore, they're still in effect. She, based on what she said, verified the legal basis for my order, And not one of those courts would address that order because they knew it contradicted their whole scheme about finding me guilty of something. And they didn't find me guilty of anything except opposing their agenda. Mm-hmm. But that's over, and I'm ready to go on to the United States Senate, and I look forward to it.
Well, let's move on to the Senate race. You look good.
Well, thank you.
You're not that old. You and I are both in our 60s.
Yeah.
You know, and you look good. Old Shelby looks good. I had supper with Shelby the other night. He'll be 82 next week. He looks great. One thing, both of y'all's hands look. I said, Shelby, your hands look so young. I don't know what y'all do. Y'all must put some kind of, Kayla make you put some kind of lotion on your hands or something?
In fact, my hands 2 days ago when I qualified at the state, I had grease around that because I've been working on a Bobcat, and I do that on my off time, so I cut my hands up pretty good and work on the farm.
People don't know you from Etowah County. You born and raised in Etowah County.
Yeah, I was born there.
Were you born and raised in the area of Etowah called Gallup that you live in now?
That's where and before that it was Etowah County, yes, basically. I lived in Houston, Texas for a while and went to Pennsylvania for a while. My dad moved around with construction work. But
Judge, that area of Gallup, what part is it? That's how far out from Gadsden is that?
It's about 16 miles, about 60 miles from Birmingham.
So it's just that way. It's on the interstate that way toward Birmingham.
Yes.
Well, it doesn't take y'all long to get to Birmingham.
No, about 2 hours.
Mm-hmm. When you, a lot of folks don't realize you went to West Point.
Yeah.
You know, that's a real honor.
And I've got a son there now.
Yeah, that's great. What year is he?
He is plebe.
Is
he? He's got about 1 more week or 2 more weeks as a plebe, and then he'll be what we call a yearling.
Was that plebe thing was tough your first year?
The roughest thing I ever did. I thought the year would never end.
They hazed y'all back then, everything.
Oh, they did a lot worse than they do now, and but it teaches you things. It teaches you to take it and not resent it and realize it's just part of life, and you got to stand up for what you believe.
Well, you got out as an officer, but did you go into the military? You were a military policeman in Vietnam, or
I was a company commander, captain in Vietnam, and I got out and I went to law school at the University of Alabama, Roll Tide.
After a couple of years.
Yeah, and then after a few years back, and then got out and went to work as a deputy district attorney.
Who all was in that? You know, people always ask in Alabama law school class, who some other people got into politics when your law school era that you knew in law school? Who all was up there that time? Baxley was gone though, wasn't he?
I think he was. Yeah, Baxley was gone, and they had few. Jean Brown was actually one of the Supreme Court justices, and she was in my class.
Same class.
Yeah.
Was anybody on the court now? Up there when you were there?
I don't think so.
You know, Tom Parker and I went to Boys State together.
Oh, yeah.
We the same
I went to
age.
Boys State.
Did you go to Boys State?
Sure did.
That was a good experience, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Very good experience. And Tom's a good justice, and he's...
he and I the same age?
He worked in the Administrative Office of Courts when I was there first Chief Justice, and then he's gone on to be Justice and does a good job.
Now, you couldn't run for Chief Justice again because I ain't saying you know, but you know that at 70.
Yeah, age.
You'd be over 70 at that time, so you couldn't run anyway for Chief Justice again. Tell me about your race for the Senate. How's it looking?
It looks very good. Our poll numbers are way up. I think we've got name recognition and people know what I stand for, and I think that they appreciate that I take a stand on issues that are important to Alabama. And there are many issues: immigration, the economy. You know, I'm a strong believer in a free enterprise system, and we're over-regulated, overtaxed, and subject to unfair trade restrictions right now. But I think President Trump will move in that direction and open up business and industry back into the states, and particularly Alabama. And I hope that we have a prosperous economy in the coming future.
You can see you working close with President Trump, can't you?
I do. I think he's got to feel taxation. He's trying to withdraw regulations. He's trying to cut back regulations. For every new regulation they pass, he wants to take away 2 or 3. And I think that's good. I think we're overregulated, and it's killing business. And we need to do something about that. Immigration, I never understood what people don't understand about illegal immigration. It's illegal under the law, and simply he's trying to stop what is illegal, and
Right.
that's what the president does. That's what a governor does, is follow the law, and yet he's having his hands full with it.
Let me ask you this: right now you're probably got a double-digit lead over the appointee Luther Strange, but it appears that the Washington Beltway Mitch McConnell group is going to raise him unlimited money, out-of-state super PAC money. I don't think Alabamians have always thought that was good for someone to come in and try to dictate to them who their senator is. I think you probably would talk about that some, but they're going to spend a lot of money, looks like, and they may narrow that gap. But he may not be in the runoff. If somebody real rich gets in there and spends $3 or $4, $5 million of their own money, now we don't know who that might be. Somebody getting there that can just write a check for $5 million, they might beat him out of that runoff with you.
Well, I think
you might win without a runoff.
Well, I don't know what we'll do. We do well, I think. I think people see through these things just like they saw through what I went through as Chief Justice. They see what's going on now, that there's a group in Washington. It's an establishment group trying to control what the people of Alabama do. And they have vowed, they said they had $2.6 million, and that was a fraction of the money they were going to spend. I mean, they have talked about, and some people have told me, $50 million.
Oh my gosh.
And I think people are going to get bored seeing these advertisements over and over and over saying something that isn't true.
I know.
And it's just an amazing situation, and I think people resent being trying to be control who comes from Alabama as their United States Senator, and they should. And I certainly wasn't pleased to hear that some group in Washington cut off all the consultants that would represent anybody against.
You weren't going to use any of those Washington consultants, were you?
No. We had one we had talked to. They backed out, and they represented outside interest, and they
What would you be? Alabama. If you look around the state, Judge, and you know this, having been around it a long time, if you took the Redstone Arsenal and Maxwell Gunner here in Montgomery and Fort Rucker and the Wiregrass, the military installations and the military dollars that come in from the federal government, what committee do you think would be more advantageous for you to be on to protect those entities?
Well, I'd like to be on the military committees of whether it's
Well, you got a
Armed
West Point
Service
background,
Commission.
so you've been in the military.
Well, I've been out of West Point. I've been in the military. I was a veteran of the foreign wars. I'm from Alabama, and Alabama is a great state for the military. Like you said, we've got Air Force bases. We've got Army installations, helicopters. We've got a lot of things. And I've always been proud of Alabama. Alabama's always had a higher percentage in the National Guard and in the reserves than any state. And basically, we send a lot of people very patriotic in Alabama. I have a son actually in the reserves. I have one at West Point, and one's trying to get in the Marines. So I guess we're going to be a military family. I think I'm too old to get back in the military, but I can't help it.
Speaking of your time, I found it interesting one time we were talking about your appointment at West Point, and you mentioned that Albert Raines had started that appointment, then Jim Martin finished it. But that shows you the change in partisanship. You and I grew up in an era when everything was Democratic in Alabama. We saw the change. Shelby epitomizes that. About the pinnacle point of when Alabamians woke up and said, well, we ain't really Democrats, we're really Republicans, and so, but in the answering how, when you were appointed to the West Point, that Albert Raines, a New Deal Democrat, was still representing Etowah County in the 4th District. And then Jim Martin, who was one of my best friends I've had on, he was one of the first guests I had on this show when I started 10 years ago. I went to the Republican convention with Jim Martin to the National Convention in 1968 in Miami. I was a page down there in the Republican convention when Nixon was nominated, but he still, they say he still goes. He and Pat still go to church every Sunday.
He still does.
Methodist church.
Jim's 95, I think, and he still gets around.
Do you ever talk to him ever?
I do. I talk to him once in a while. He tells me stories from World War II.
He remembers it then.
He remembers very well. And also was a good friend of Albert Raines. Albert Raines was a wonderful man. I was blessed to have those two, both. Albert first recommended me to Martin because he was leaving and Martin was coming in, and Martin recommended me to West Point, and I was blessed.
You must have been a good student.
Well, I did well in school. I had a lot to learn, I'll tell you the truth.
You know, a lot of those old guys stay in Congress so long,
Yeah.
they lose, you know, it's like anybody who lives to be 90 years old, your peers are gone. Yeah. And Bobby Junkins was good friends with Albert Raines.
Yeah.
And he told me one time, he says, your probate judge, Bobby Junkins, he says, I was the only one young enough and big enough to carry the coffin. He said that everybody was so, you know, Albert Raines, his friends, he were 90 years old. That's the problem. If you live too long, your peers are gone, you know. Yeah. But anyway, I didn't mean to get off on that. But you're getting around the state, all over the state?
Oh, yes. Going out tonight, going to Troy, and going to somewhere else next Monday and this weekend. We travel a lot and get around and speak. I enjoy getting out with people. I think more now than I ever have because I know so much about Alabama and the
well, you've run several times.
law, and I know a lot about the Constitution. And I enjoy talking about it.
Would you like to be on the Agriculture Committee?
I come from a farm. That would be.
Alabama ain't had an Agriculture Committee member since Heffman.
Yeah.
Old Heffman was the last senator
He
we
was
had.
former Chief Justice.
Yeah. You know, he was the last person. I know Heffman was a Democrat, but he was a good guy. He and old Steve Raby, you know, up there, he used to run around, and old Judge had a great wit about him. You know, he had the best stories about him. He was a great guy. But he was chairman of Agriculture.
I would like to be on the Judiciary Committee.
Well, that'd be a
I think I know a lot about the Constitution, about the qualifications of a judge, and what a judge should think about the Constitution.
Heffman was on Judiciary, wasn't he? I think so, yeah.
I know Sessions was.
Yeah, Sessions was. Well, that's a seat there. They probably put you in that seat because there's a seat on Judiciary.
Well, I'd be a new member, so I suppose they go by rank. But
well, no, but they got a spot there because Sessions was was on that. But Sessions, I don't think was on Armed Services. Neither he nor Shelby have ever been on Agriculture. Like I say, Heffman was the last one that. Heffman single-handedly, being from the Wiregrass, he single-handedly saved that peanut program. You know, he single-handedly saved it. I know you don't hear this story, but talking about your opponent, you ought to tell him where he's from. He's from Mountain Brook. You know, Heffman got to talk about when old Bill Cabbage was going to run against him for the U.S. Senate. I never saw a greater gentleman in my life than Bill Cabbage, but he was sure born with a silver spoon in his mouth. He was old Mountain Brook money, and Heffman was going to run against old Heffman, and Heffman says they were going to have to identify him negatively, you know, and they were going to have all these gurus going to tell him how to do it. And Heffman says, "I'll tell you how we're going to identify him. We're going to call him Mr. Cabanis. You're going to call him Bill Cabanis, and we're going to say he's one of those Gucci shoe wearing, Rolex watch wearing, Kennebunkport, Maine vacationing, Grey Poupon mustard dipping, Mercedes driving, Mountain Brook Republicans." You ought to run. You ought to say Luther is a Mountain Brook Republican. Show that ad old little Jim had it playing tennis at the Mountain Brook Country Club. Well, people hate Mountain Brook. You know, I hate to say that. Bless his heart, because they're so rich.
I stay away from criticizing my opponents. I'd rather talk about my qualifications.
But I guarantee you, when they pull that $50 million out, they ain't just going to run positive ads. I hate to tell you.
Well, I know that, and I expect that. I've been through it. Listen, I've been through it so many times. But you know something you said earlier about the people of Alabama. it is amazing to me, and I am truly amazed that the people of Alabama see through a lot of this stuff.
They do.
There's more wisdom in the people of Alabama than there are in these committees and these things in Washington and these courts. The people of Alabama, we're talking about farmers, we're talking about merchants, we're talking about, they actually see through a lot of the garbage that we're fed out of Washington and out of Montgomery, quite frankly. They actually get it, and I would rather put my fate in the hands of the people of Alabama than I would in any other committee or court. And I just appreciate them so much. Appreciate people that are down to earth.
What about the health care thing? What do you think the answer to that is, Judge? About
It's
when y'all
very
get about
simple.
Obamacare, the U.S. Senate's trying to rewrite that right now.
I would repeal it. I would vote to repeal in a heartbeat. I think that is, in fact, I just wrote a check onto a medical facility for my wife's operation, and hardly anything was covered. You don't have quality health care under Obamacare, and you're finding that you don't have, you might as well be saving your money and putting it in a bank and paying your own health care. But of course they got rules against that. It's just not the role of the federal government. If the federal, you know, Reagan said once, the 9 most frightening words in the English language: I'm here from the government and I'm here to help you. I mean, the government generally does not help. It generally overregulates, overtaxes, and so forth.
You know, people don't realize you spend a lot of time throughout North Alabama. I'm in almost all those papers: Haleyville, Hamilton,
Yeah.
Scottsboro, Fort Payne, and they send me copies of those papers, and you get good response up there. That's a very Christian part of the state.
It is.
It's a very conservative area. People don't realize how conservative and religious people are up there.
It is, but you know, I get the same thing in the Wiregrass.
I know.
To me, there's just different areas of the state, but the people in the Wiregrass, the people in northwest Alabama, northeast Alabama, south, Baldwin County, and all through the Montgomery area, I've gotten good responses all over the state.
Yeah.
And down in the southwest.
You know, there's an old theory about friends and neighbors politics in Alabama. Dr. V.O. Key brought it out. I was on a radio show a while ago, and I got to thinking, people a lot of times, now you're a statewide figure, so you've got statewide exposure, and people don't necessarily think of you as one region or the other. But let's say if somebody else had gotten in there, like somebody from Mobile and Baldwin, do you know they'd have gotten a big vote in that area just being from down there? People like to vote for somebody from their neck of the woods.
I understand that.
That's a very profound thing. I'm surprised that nobody from Mobile got in that race, because you know Baldwin County, you know this, having county votes, that's one of the 5 most important Republican counties in the state.
It is. I love Baldwin County. In fact, I've got friends down there.
I'd spend time down there.
I love Gulf Shores. I go down there, and well, I did. I haven't this year because I've been so busy. But we
I wouldn't tell them I was going to the beach. They'll think you're one of those Gucci shoe wearing Mountain Brook Republicans.
I haven't been to the beach in a year and a half, I guess.
Tell them you're going up to pick potatoes. Do you remember when we were little boys how you read about Alabama history and they got out picked potatoes?
I picked tomatoes.
They grew potatoes.
I picked green beans.
Yeah, in Baldwin County. Remember, it was the potato capital of the state. Yeah. John McMillan sat here on the show and told me they let them out of school to pick potatoes.
Well, we had to pick green beans for income, and I remember explicitly.
Did you grow up on a farm?
Well, sure. It wasn't much of a farm. I lived in the country, but I picked green beans on Sand Mountain, and I picked 13 bushel in a day. I think we got 85 cents.
How much would you make?
It wasn't much. It was like 85 cents a bushel, and it took all day, but I was a champion green bean picker, I guess.
How would you do it so quick? Just get down to an art?
Just grab them.
You never picked cotton, did you?
No, I didn't.
But I'm glad you wouldn't tell a story about it. I've had people tell me they picked cotton. I knew good and well they hadn't ever picked any cotton. You know, people growing up think they pick cotton. Just like every rich man I ever knew in Alabama told me they worked their way through college waiting on tables. I'm thinking, well, who in the world ate the food if all y'all picked waiting on tables? I thought, you know, everybody who got rich in Alabama, that's the one story. You ask some old man, well, I had to work work up picking up, waiting on tables going through Alabama.
Well, I carried groceries. I was a Piggly Wiggly carryout boy.
I carried papers. I was a paper route. I walk my paper route in Troy now.
Yeah.
Where I grew up in Troy, I still live right there close to where I live, and I walk my paper route.
Yeah.
For my walk every day. Tell me this: you gonna ride your horse to the polling place in Gallant when you vote? You and Kayla gonna ride your horses?
Probably. We've done it several times lately, and we love horses. We got 5, and they cost.
That's an expensive hobby, isn't it?
That's expensive. Somebody told me you could make $2 million in horses if you buy, or you make $1 million in horses if you buy them for $2 million. Keep them a year. You'll have $1 million.
They're expensive hobbies.
They're worth it. Children love them.
Yeah.
And they're
Have y'all got grandchildren yet?
5.
Are they
5
up
girls.
there?
Yes.
Up there close to y'all. That's good. Judge, we ain't got about a minute left. Summarize, if you would, why you think Alabamians ought to vote for you for the U.S. Senate, for this open Senate seat.
Well, I think
tell us what you think.
People know I'm experienced. I stand for what the principles upon which our Constitution was based and what the people of Alabama believe. I've got a military background. I've got a farming background, as you've mentioned. I've got a background in law. And I think it's very important because when you're sworn to the Constitution, as I've been since 1965 on the banks of the Hudson River, you know what it means and you know what it's there for. And I think we've lost a little bit of that in Washington. I look forward to going to Washington and debating the issues of immigration, health care, economy, and the military issues that are very big in our country. So I think I can bring a lot to Washington on behalf of the people of the state.
Well, you're exactly right. You've nailed it right there. Folks, our guest tonight has been former Chief Justice of the Alabama Supreme Court, Judge Roy Moore, who is a candidate for the United States Senate, and the election's right upon us, y'all. There's only one election this year for the United States Senate. Those seats come open very seldom, and we thank Judge Moore for being with us, and we thank you viewers for watching Alabama Politics, and hope you tune again next week. Thank you, Judge Moore.
Thank you, Steve, and I appreciate the vote of the people
Yes,
this
sir.
upcoming election.